Do you know how many nuclear weapons Ukraine had when the Soviet Union broke up 30 years ago? Russia has 4,500 nuclear warheads today. But then Ukraine had 5,000 nuclear weapons. Ukraine had long-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying thermonuclear warheads. What happened that this most powerful country has become so weak that today it is unable to defend itself and is forced to beg for cooperation from European Union? Who is responsible for taking the world to the brink of nuclear war? Russia or America? What are possible consequences of the Ukraine and Russia war? Today, we would try to sort out these questions. You are watching Tarazu English and I am Bilal. After separation from the Soviet Union, the Ukrainian leadership decided to give up its nuclear weapons and make the country a peaceful state. Vladimir Tolubko, a former nuclear base commander, now a member of the Ukrainian parliament, strongly opposed the decision, insisting that Ukraine must have nuclear weapons in order to maintain balance of power. But Ukraine, Belarus and Kazakhstan signed the NPT, Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. The talks were first held in Moscow between the United States, Russia and Ukraine. And then in 1994 in Budapest, the capital of Hungary, under the agreement which was called Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurance, the United States, Britain and Russia assured that if Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, its sovereignty would be respected. No country would commit aggression, and if any country invaded Ukraine, the United States, Russia and Britain will work with the United Nations to ensure Ukraine's defense. Ukraine returned nuclear weapons to Russia after securing defense guarantees under the Budapest Memorandum. In May 1996, Ukraine handed over the last shipment of nuclear weapons to Russia and the issue was settled. It was considered a great success of US President Bill Clinton. When Ukraine was being persuaded to sign the NPT, Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But Nawaz Sharif and Benazir Bhutto, who became Prime Minister after him, refused to give in to the pressure and Pakistan never signed NPT. Ukraine, who was deceived by international community to sign NPT, if we try to compare its military power with Russia, there seems no comparison. The 64-kilometer long military convoy of Russian forces is located 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian capital with 1,90,000 troops, while Russia has a total of 9 lakh troops. Ukraine has 132 warships, while Russia has 1,391 fighter jets. Russia has 49 submarines, while Ukraine has none. Ukraine has only 55 helicopters, while Russia has 948 helicopters. Ukraine spends 4.7 billion US dollars on defense, while Russia has a defense budget of $45.8 billion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly called on NATO to help, and European countries have relied on rhetoric rather than action. Few viewers may get confused about the names of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It is actually the same name derived from Prince Volodymyr, who ruled the region during the 10th century. In Russian, it is called Vladimir, while in Ukrainian language, it is called Volodymyr. Anyhow, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly called on NATO to impose a no-fly zone on Ukraine so that Russia's air forces does not carry out bombings. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has responded by saying that NATO will not establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine as it would trigger a border conflict and could end in a full-fledged war.
Allies agree that we should not have NATO planes operating over Ukrainian airspace or NATO troops on Ukrainian territory.
What will be the outcome of this war? We will try to find out answer to this question, but first we will try to find out who is responsible for this situation. You may have heard the English phrase, the first casualty when war comes is truth. The same thing happened after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We are being told that Vladimir Putin is a contemporary Hitler. He is mentally sick. He is pushing the world towards another world war. And everyone have to pay the cost of his aggressive and expansionist ambitions. Whether Ukraine joins NATO or not, what does Russia have to do with it? Does Vladimir Putin is dawn of this region? But the point is not so simple and straightforward. In 1962, when Fidel Castro was the ruler of Cuba, the USSR installed nuclear-capable missiles there. Why did US President Kennedy threaten war, and why was the world pushed towards the brink of a nuclear war? Because the United States was only 90 miles away from Cuba and could be targeted by these missiles. Unlike Cuba, Ukraine and Russia share a border. The Russian rulers view Ukraine as their backyard, just as Pakistan views Afghanistan as its backyard. So Pakistan considered it a threat to its national security when USSR army landed in Kabul. The general impression is that the responsibility for the current situation lies entirely with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who considers himself an Iron Man and wants to take Russia to new heights. But the reality is quite different. The Western leaders who have made Ukraine a battleground in the pursuit of more land are to be blamed for the situation. The question is how the European Union and NATO paved the way for this war. To find the answer, we have to turn the pages of history and find out how NATO's sphere of influence gradually grew. After World War II, when the USSR emerged victorious, in 1949 the United States and Canada formed a military alliance with 10 European countries, and it was named the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. The most important article in the NATO Charter is Article 5, which states that if any member state is attacked, all other countries will defend it together. The Netherlands, Portugal, Iceland and Luxembourg became part of military alliance. Greece and Turkey joined NATO in 1952 and West Germany joined the North Atlantic Treaty in 1955. In 1955, several Eastern European countries joined the USSR to form a parallel military alliance against NATO, and it was called Warsaw Pact. The map you see behind me at the moment is perfect reflection of NATO's expansionist ambitions and show how NATO's sphere of influence gradually grew. After fall of USSR in December 1991, Ukraine, Belarus, Central Asian states and Baltic states such as Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia became independent. The allegiance of the countries involved in the Warsaw Pact were changed, thus reducing Russia's influence and expanding NATO's sphere of influence. Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Hungary, Romania, Albania, Northern Mesopotamia and Bulgaria were incorporated into NATO. Russia has shown restraint and tolerance while these states were being incorporated into NATO because on one hand they were very small countries and on the other hand Russia was still defeated and in no position to react. But then something happened that infuriated the Red Bear. After the end of the Cold War, an attempt was made to bring NATO to Russia's doorstep. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization met in Bukhara in April 2008, following which it was stated that NATO welcomed Ukraine's and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations for membership into NATO. We agreed today that these countries will become members of NATO. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister, in a quick response to the Bukhara conference statement, said that Georgia and Ukraine's membership in alliance is a huge strategic mistake, which will have the most serious consequences. Mr. Putin also warned European countries that Georgia and Ukraine becoming part of NATO is direct threat to Russia. Western nations ignored these warnings and continued their efforts to peel off these countries from the communist bloc and incorporate into Western bloc. Russia fought a 5-day war with Georgia in August 2008, but the situation did not reach to the point of no return. Ukrainian President Yanukovych, who was negotiating to join NATO and the European Union, was offered a good deal by Russian President Vladimir Putin. And ultimately he refused to join the Western Bloc. At this stage, Uncle Sam decided to use its most sophisticated and lethal weapon of democracy and turn the tables around. Protests against Ukrainian President Yanukovych began as a part of well thought out plan. The protests gradually intensified. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a $15 billion aid to Ukraine, but the situation worsened. During January and February 2014, the protests turned violent. On 22 February 2014, pro-Russian President Yanukovych was forced to flee the country and seek refuge in Russia. Following departure of Yanukovych, elections were held on 25th May 2014, in which Petro Poroshenko was elected president of Ukraine. And in the next presidential election, a comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, was elected president. When Yanukovych was overthrown, Russia occupied the Crimean Peninsula. Crimea Peninsula in the Black Sea was ceded to Ukraine by Nikita Khrushchev and now was taken back through a referendum. In protest, Russian President Vladimir Putin also annulled the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which promised to respect Ukraine's sovereign state. The people of Ukraine are divided and dispersed in many respects. The people of eastern Ukraine speak Russian and have sympathies with Russia, while the people of western Ukraine speak Ukrainian and are attracted towards Western countries. Residents of eastern Ukraine consider themselves independent and sovereign, and there is no government threat, while the Ukrainian state considers them rebels. But no serious attempt was made to crush the uprising by force. But when the rebels shot down the Malaysian airliner MH17 on July 17, 2014, the Ukrainian government launched a military operation against the rebels. Then Russia sent his troops to fight along with the rebels, and later there was an attempt to resolve the issue through negotiations, but the situation worsened. What could be possible outcome of the war between Ukraine and Russia, and what is the logical solution to this problem? The Europe, which depends on Russia for its energy needs, how it would pay for this war? More details will be revealed in the coming episodes. If you want to give your opinion or any suggestion, then our WhatsApp number 0332 8410 537 is available. Give your feedback, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications of the videos. Thanks for watching Tarazu. Bye. Russia has seized Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Ukraine. What would be the possible outcome of this war? Could Russia occupy all the states that were separated after the collapse of the USSR in 1991? Are we really on the brink of a third world war, and it could be a nuclear war? Today we will try to find out answers to these questions. You are watching Tarazu English and I am Bilal Ori. The Russian military has seized control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Ukraine after shelling. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is now being shut down. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Europe has to wake up now. Europe's largest nuclear plant is on fire. If the Russian attack has spread radiation from this nuclear power plant, it could have caused 6 times more destruction than Chernobyl. The European Union imports 61% of its energy needs, and Russia is the largest supplier of energy to Europe. European Union member states import 50% of their natural gas and 25% of their oil needs from Russia. Natural gas from Russia is supplied to Europe through Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline. After invading Ukraine, Russia has halted work on Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which was under construction, causing gas prices in Europe to rise by 70% in the past 2 weeks and could further in coming days. If Ukraine and Russia war drags on, Europeans will starve for bread, as both Russia and Ukraine are among the major grain suppliers. Russia ranks first among wheat and flour suppliers, exporting 35 million tons of wheat each year, while Ukraine is the fourth largest exporter of wheat. Lebanon buys 50% of its total wheat from Ukraine, Libya imports 43% of the wheat from Ukraine, and Tunis buys 32% of the total grain from Ukraine. 80% of Egypt's wheat needs come from Russia, while 20% from Ukraine. Pakistan also imported large quantities of wheat from Ukraine last year. And now, after the visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan to Russia, it has been decided to buy 2 million metric tons of wheat from Russia. Russia and Ukraine not only matter due to wheat production, they are also biggest exporter of other agricultural commodities. For example, China buys 90% of its total maize imports from Ukraine. It means the war will not only push up gas, electricity and oil prices, but other countries in general and Western countries in particular will face shortage of agricultural commodities. Now we come to the question of whether the NATO countries would be foolish enough to jump into this war. The answer is absolutely not. No country, including the United States, would be willing to take part in this war directly, because in this case, the war would engulf the whole world. Senator John McCain has said in the past that Ukraine is not of strategic importance to the United States. US President Joe Biden, who at the time of Russian invasion of Ukraine was content to offer mere prayers, said in his State of the Union address that Russia has threatened democracy by imposing war on Europe, and claimed that the Russian President Vladimir Putin would be punished. But he did not clarify how this punishment would be carried out. Will economic sanctions be enough? Will the sanctions make a difference to Russia? The answer is no. When the Soviet Union forces entered Kabul in 1979, the United States imposed economic sanctions, but these sanctions made no difference. When United States handed over state-of-the-art Stinger missiles to Afghan Mujahideen, only then battle took a new turn and the course of war was changed. Even today, Western countries cannot stop the advancement of Russian forces through economic sanctions. Russian forces have conquered the Ukrainian city of Kherson and are not advancing despite being 30 kilometers away from the capital, as a full occupation of Ukraine may not be among their priorities and goals. International experts believe that Russian forces want to divide Ukraine into two parts, and for this purpose, it is necessary to conquer Mariupol city in order to annex eastern Ukraine to the Crimean Peninsula. If Russian forces succeed in capturing Mariupol, Ukraine will be cut off from the sea, and the largest port in the region will also come under Russian control. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed US members of the Congress via Zoom video call. As about 280 members of the parliament gathered to listen his speech, he said in an emotional way, "Close the skies or give us planes," means either block the airspace of Ukraine by imposing no-fly zone so that Russian warplanes do not attack us, or give us warplanes to counter them. In an hour-long speech, the Ukrainian president called on United States to immediately provide $10 billion in aid and to stop buying oil from Russia. Despite repeated appeals from President Volodymyr Zelensky, the implementation of the no-fly zone in Ukraine is a difficult decision, as Russian President Putin has made it clear that if NATO tried to impose no-fly zone, it would be considered as an act of war. Some people may be wondering what is meant by enforcing a no-fly zone. A no-fly zone means that certain types of aircraft cannot fly within the airspace of a region. The ban is usually imposed to protect specific areas of a country from airstrikes. If a no-fly zone is applied in Ukraine, it would mean that NATO-led forces would not allow Russian planes to fly over Ukraine, and they have to shoot down those jets who would try to violate it. Another question is, has the no-fly zone ever been used before? In 1991, after the first Gulf War, the United States and its allies implemented 2 no-fly zones in Iraq in order to protect certain religious groups from attacks. This was done without the approval of the United Nations. Then during the Balkan Wars in 1992, the United Nations adopted a resolution banning unauthorized military flights into Bosnian airspace. In addition, the US Security Council approved a no-fly zone in Libya in 2011. The no-fly zone in Bosnia and Libya was implemented by NATO forces. But those no-fly zones were implemented against fragile and weak countries. If such an attempt is made against Russia, not only this war would spread to the whole of Europe, but Russia as a desperate attempt could also use nuclear weapons. Another worrying question is whether there is a threat of Third World War. Former United States Vice President Dan Quayle has said that we are on the brink of a Third World War. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has not ruled out fears of a Third World War, but has sounded the alarm by saying that a Third World War would be fought with nuclear weapons. The threat of World War III is so real and serious that the Queen of United Kingdom has drafted her speech in the event of outbreak of World War III. The text of the Queen's speech says, "I have never forgotten the sorrow and the pride I felt as my sister and I huddled around the nursery wireless set listening to my father's inspiring words on that fateful day in 1939. Not for a single moment did I imagine that this solemn and awful duty would one day fall to me." Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke by telephone with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, and later French President issued a statement saying, "Worst is yet to come." What would be the worst now? Can nuclear war really break out? There are 9 atomic powers in the world: Russia, the United States, France, China, the United Kingdom, Israel, Pakistan, India, and North Korea. These all countries have a total of 15,000 operational nuclear warheads, while only 100 atomic bombs can destroy the entire world and human beings. If the West refrains from escalating its provocations and the war in Ukraine continues for a long time, Russia will face the same fate as the United States suffered in Vietnam and then in Afghanistan, or in the same way as the Russian forces were humiliated in Afghanistan soil and had to retreat in disgrace. As the war drags on, the difficulties of Russian army will increase. In other words, Russia can conquer Ukraine but cannot win it. Russian forces may get control over Ukraine, but they cannot rule there for a long time. When the guerrilla war breaks out, the difficulties of the Russian forces will increase manifold. Therefore, Putin will never want this war to escalate further. Then what could be expected? Will Russia retreat? The answer is no. Ukraine is a core strategic asset of Russia, a backyard, so Russia will not back down easily. If the world powers see this issue as a human tragedy instead of consuming Ukraine as a real state peace, this mess could still be cleared through diplomacy. The best solution for Western nations to recognize Ukraine as a buffer state instead of provoking the people of Ukraine and pushing them to the brink of destruction. Ukraine must be such an impartial state which is not tributary to Russia, a subordinate country of European Union. Russia, United States of America, and United Kingdom should respect Ukraine as sovereign state by implementing the Budapest Memorandum. Now comes the last question, whether it was appropriate for Prime Minister Imran Khan to visit Russia in these circumstances. The day Prime Minister Imran Khan met with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, the same day Russian forces invaded Ukraine. It is a bitter truth that when individuals commit blunders at diplomatic level, the nations have to pay the price of these mistakes. In 1979, when General Ziaul-Haq was self-proclaimed President of Pakistan and a revolution took place in Iran, a similar mistake was made at diplomatic level, which Pakistan still has to pay. General K.M. Arif writes in his autobiography, Working with Zia, page number 287, while Iran burnt with hatred of the Shah, Pakistan's ambassador in Tehran, Ghiyasuddin Ahmad, conceived a bright plan. He repeatedly suggested that General Ziaul-Haq should urgently visit Tehran to demonstrate Pakistan's friendship toward the beleaguered Shah in his hour of trouble. In his assessment, the Shah was likely to weather the political storm as his defense forces were loyal to him. A 3-day visit to Iran from 9 to 11 September 1978 by President Ziaul-Haq was thus planned. This turned out to be a diplomatic blunder. That was the reality of Russian-Ukraine conflict. If you want to give your opinion or any suggestion, then our WhatsApp number 03328410-537 is available. Give your feedback, like, subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications of new videos. Thanks for watching Tarazu.